Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our team preseason power rankings. Today, we're talking about the New York Giants, a team that half of my family are fans of, the other half are Jets fans. I'm a New Yorker. I've made that very clear throughout my podcast, throughout pretty much every form of social media. I am a New Yorker, and I will make that your problem. As a result, I gaslighted Dean into putting this team as high up as physically possible. Yes, they are only 25 despite that. In all seriousness, though, I do think the Giants are a much better team than they're getting credit for, even though they're just 25. And I'm glad that Dean is in agreement with me on that statement. I'm here to talk them up because I'm telling you right now, there's a lot of shows being really pessimistic about them, and I'm here to be a little bit more optimistic. Dean, anything you want to say before we get into this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite as optimistic as you as we found out with this team, but I can't imagine this team's bad. And a large part of that has to do with who's the head coach and who's running this team. And because I'm a big Brian Dable fan, I think he is a really good head coach, man. What he was able to do in his first season with that team speaks volumes to how he is. And like you look back at last year and all the turmoil this team and this roster went through, I'd argue they were still playing above what they probably should have been if there was a not so great head coach back there. You know what I'm saying? So
Without a doubt. Without a
you get
doubt.
into Brian Dable for me. Tell
I
me what
mean,
you like about him.
listen, we remember last year, Tommy DeVito came in and they were winning football games, man.
Yep.
And that's because Dable, I'm still not quite sold on him as a head coach. Not quite. I think he deserves to be on the hot seat like he is right now. But he's definitely a good coordinator. He definitely knows how to manage an offense. He does a very good job with it. And that's part of the reason he knows how to succeed with Dable out there. It's part of the reason he knows how to succeed with Daniel Jones out there. We acknowledge Daniel Jones is not this great quarterback. But as a head coach, from a culture perspective, despite being a little bit of a Belichick disciple, he does not just try and make this into just the Patriots way. Let's do it. He doesn't. It's very clear. Now, he might have stole a couple of aspects of it, but he doesn't quite just rip off the Patriot way and hope it works because we know by now that that doesn't work. Dable, he's someone that will go out there and, despite being an offensive minded guy, he'll make sure his guys are fired up. Okay? He
Yep.
does, I like to think, a pretty good job bringing together a staff. We're going to talk about some of the coordinators that he brought in. But overall, from a culture perspective, how do you feel about the Giants team?
Culture is interesting because there's a bit of reports that came out last year about there was some bad blood between Dable and Martindale
Yeah.
and some of the head coaches, and you wonder if that's going to carry on over into this
Mm-hmm.
season if things aren't going the Giants' way. So that's something to keep an eye on. But overall, I think the culture of this team, again, I believe in Dable. I'm not completely sold on him like you are. I think he does deserve to be on the hot seat,
Yeah,
but
no, I agree. I
I
completely agree
think
there.
you could do a lot worse culture wise.
Oh,
That's for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, and here's the thing, too. It's not like they saw those issues that Martindale was having with Dable and just swept them under the rug and tried to make it work for another season. They addressed them. They got rid of the coaches that had problems with Dable. Whether Dable's in the right or wrong, we don't really know. That's not really for us to speak on because we don't have all the information. But based on what we do know, Dable and Martindale were having some conflicts, and they got rid of the players. They got rid of the coaches that had a problem with Dable.
Right.
Xavier McKinney was one of those guys. He's gone now. We're going to talk more about that later on. But for now, from a culture perspective, I do just want to say I don't think it's awful, but when a team outperforms their expectations, the way that Dable did when he won Coach of the Year, and the Giants did when Dable won Coach of the Year, it could be a little bit of a bad thing because then expectations get set higher for the next
Right.
season. And then what happened to the Giants the season after they won a playoff game against the Vikings? Well, they didn't even make the playoffs. In fact, they started off the season getting completely murdered. Then the next week they nearly lost to the Cardinals, which weren't, they weren't a very good team. And then they also got murdered by the San Francisco 49ers the week
Yep.
after that. So it was easy to say stuff was falling apart, but they did seem to kind of recover towards the end of the year. Now, again, I think from a locker room perspective, I don't think it's in a great spot, because they have quarterback issues, and I imagine some people probably want Dable gone. But, now it's time to ask, was that successful season truly just a fluke? Well, we're going to see the answer this season. I think there's a lot riding on it because I think not just the Giants fan base has high expectations for them or had high expectations, and now those expectations were wiped away. But I'm telling you right now, players, after getting a taste of that playoff success, you want more. Okay?
Yep.
That's the big thing. And if they don't at least see something that leads them to thinking they might be able to get that sometime soon, Dable is going to be out of here, and those players are going to be pissed.
Yeah, and again, may not be the greatest locker room vibe and environment right now, but winning solves everything. Winning solves a lot of things, usually most of the time. So if they can get back to maybe not even the playoffs, just a positive season where you're on the borderline of making it, you're feeling a lot better as the Giants players, as the Giants staff, as the owners. So let's now move into this offense. And Mike Kafka is the offensive coordinator. Brian Dable's calling the plays this year.
Mm-hmm.
His job's on the line. This is his offense to do. Outside, run heavy scheme. He's a very quarterback friendly offense, man. That's what we saw in that first year. Very good at scheming players open, making things easy on his quarterback, Daniel Jones. And it should be a lot easier this year with the weapon that they added with maybe a better offensive line. But what do you have to say about this offense before we get into the roster?
Well, we know that Dable can kind of run his offense on a spectrum depending on how much he trusts the talent that he's provided with, right? Because we've seen what he does with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, but then we've also seen what he does with Daniel Jones and Isaiah Hodgins. Very, very different. He can get closer to that Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs thing if he trusts this cast of guys. But let's be honest, he probably doesn't. And he's going to get as far away from the Josh Allen offense as possible. Okay? He's going to go back to basics, back to what they were doing in 2022. Single read. If you don't see the read open, just run. Because Daniel Jones, he hasn't shown the ability to really go from read to read to read. He is yet to, and now it's so deep into his career, he's not going to be able to. It's just that simple. But I will say, if they do decide to kind of let Daniel Jones go loose, cock his arm back, and tell him to throw it, deep down the field, he can do it. He has the arm, and he has the legs to extend the plays.
Good deep ball. He's always had a good
Yeah,
deep
he
ball.
always had, but he never had the opportunity to express it because that offensive line is so bad. Will it be bad again this year? I have reasons to believe that it might not, but let's be honest, it probably isn't going to be overly great either. I'm expecting it to be another dink and dunk, one read and run type of offense. Now they don't have a Saquon Barkley to rely on, and now it's going to have to rely even more on someone, whether that's Daniel Jones or the new guy they brought in, Malik Neighbors. I think the offense is really going to run through him.
Yeah, and I can completely agree with you on the Daniel Jones stuff. I think there's a good amount of quarterbacks that are better than Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
But, again, this offense doesn't really – you'd love an elite quarterback. You'd love a really good quarterback. This offense doesn't really require one. So Daniel Jones can be serviceable enough. I think he can play better than he did last season. He's not the only quarterback on this roster that could potentially see playing time next year. If Daniel Jones isn't cutting it, I wouldn't be surprised if Drew Lock got in and they tried him out there. That's kind of different than Jones in the sense of big arm, loves launching it downfield, whether it's open or not. And Drew Lock has shown flashes in his career. Last season alone, he had that final drive to beat the Eagles when he was on the Seahawks, So it's an intriguing option. There's a lot of people that headed into this saying like, oh, we got a QB competition brewing in New York. It's Daniel Jones' job to lose. I highly doubt there's any competition going on at this very moment, but I did want to give Drew Lock a mention.
Yeah, no, and listen, that quarterback room, it's going to be an open competition. But from a schematic perspective, you said it yourself, it's going to be dink and dunk, one read and run. That's how this offense is going to be ran. With me, I am interested to see how these passing concepts work. Is it going to be more of these timing-based concepts where, you got to see the guy open or anticipate him open? Or are they going to try and get it going a little bit more vertical? Right? Are they going to have more faith in that offensive line, at least on occasion? Because while I think that there's a chance that it is fully dink and dunk fully, like it was in 2022. I think with the new changes to the offensive line, you might have the ability to occasionally take the deep shot now and then. For me, that's the big question I want to see here. And I think these quarterbacks kind of play into that. We talked a lot about that quarterback room already, though. Daniel Jones, of course, he has the arm, but he's not overly aggressive. Drew Lock is too aggressive. Both of them have the arm to make those throws. It's again just a question of can they go from read to read
So
to
I'm so
read.
I'm- so
If
I'm
not,
hearing that Daniel Jones isn't as aggressive. Drew Lock's too aggressive. I'm hearing Tommy DeVito's the good middle piece that should be starting.
I mean, what's funny is that there was a legitimate group of people that were arguing that.
Oh, so much.
Yeah.
Hey, I argued. I wish they would have kept Tyrod to a degree. Tyrod was good when he played for them last year.
Tyrod was good, but he pissed off Dable. He
Did he
pissed
really?
Dable off. I
I
don't
didn't
know if
know
you
that.
remember, there was one specific play. I forgot what game it was. But they were on the goal line.
It was the Bills game, right?
It was the Bills game.
Prime time,
They were on
yeah.
the goal, yeah. Prime time, Bills game. And keep in mind, I guess Dable must have, really wanted to win it because it was not just an NFL game, but also a revenge game for him against his former
Yeah.
team. That would have been a big statement win for him. And it was right before halftime, and he checked to a run play, or he checked from a run to a pass play, and Dable chewed him out. Chewed him out. And because of that, the clock ran out. I think he checked from a pass to a run
It
play.
was a check from pass to a run, I believe.
was-
They give it to Saquon.
yeah, pass
Now,
to a
I
run.
want to say giving it to Saquon on the goal line isn't exactly the worst decision in the world.
Yeah,
either,
but when there's just a few seconds left, I
Yeah.
don't know.
it's risky for sure.
Yeah. And listen, you just said it right there. Saquon Barkley, he was a big part of that offense. He was a big part. When they needed a play, go to Saquon. Right? That's the entire memo. Now they don't have him. Now this running back room is, I mean, it's dry. It's dry.
It's
There's
bad.
not
It-
really
It's quite bad. Now,
much.
before we rag on it all too much, Devin Singletary had a really good year last year.
Yeah.
Devin
At
Singletary,
parts, he
Yeah,
did fall
parts of
off
his-
after. He had like a 3-4 game stretch where it was really good, but then he kind of just fell off a cliff.
and you're not mad that you have Devin Singletary in this backfield. Clear downgrade from Saquon, of course, but you're not mad Devin Singletary is going to be your primary ball handler. It's everybody after that you're like, Eric Gray doesn't move me. I didn't like Tyrone Tracy's film coming out of college this year.
He's
Doesn't
fast.
move me.
He got
He's
speed.
fast. I'm sure they'll figure out something for him, but
Yeah.
that's about it when it came to Tyrone Tracy.
Mm-hmm.
Very dry. Dry is a good word for it. A very
Yeah.
dry running back room.
Mm-hmm. And that's very different from what they had in the past when they had Saquon Barkley, who would always demand attention. Always demand attention. They don't have a running back like that. They need someone else to demand attention for them now. And luckily for them, they spent that first round pick in order to get someone to demand attention. Malik Neighbors, add him to that receiver core. How much of a difference do you think that guy makes?
Makes an absolute difference. This is such a higher caliber of receiver and potential receiver than they've had on this roster in the last couple of years. Now, here's my thing with Neighbors. Neighbors was my third-ranked wide receiver. I had him behind Harrison and Adunze. And I like Malik Neighbors a lot. I have concerns about if he can be a true number one, if he can be an X. I don't think he can really be I'd be surprised if he was playing an X receiver role in the NFL. I think he's people don't talk about it enough. I think he's quite bad against press coverage. I think his film against press coverage is quite bad.
Sure. Okay.
I'm
not disagreeing at all.
Right.
But how many times are we going to go through this guy is bad against press man, and then he comes into the league, and how many teams are really running press man?
That was my next kind of thing with him. I still loved Neighbors. Was one of the top 5 players in this draft for me. It was more like Adunze was on the board. I would have rather gone Adunze, but at the same time, Malik Neighbors might be a better fit for this offense. They like to do.
They like to get guys open in space and just have them do their thing.
Absolutely, and I think, especially with the way that Dable can put receivers in motion, and he doesn't need to play X. They can put him in the slot. They can line him up behind the line of scrimmage to avoid being pressed.
That's the thing. That's exactly what I'm talking about. In the modern NFL, there are so many ways to get receivers away from press man.
Exactly.
If there wasn't, Tank Dell wouldn't have lit it up last year. If there wasn't, Devonta Smith wouldn't be one of the highest paid receivers in football. There's so many ways to avoid it when you have the right guy calling plays, designing the offense. I think Kafka's the right guy. I think that Brian Dable is the right guy. He's not going to be facing
that was what I
was
leading into.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I was leading into. Is they have the right guys to make use of the skill set Malik Neighbors has, and that's incredible after the catch. Yeah. He has great hands. I wouldn't call him a great route runner, but he's so explosive
he's
that
a damn good one.
It makes his route running. It makes his good route running great. Like it's hard to keep up with the guy. Yeah. So I like it. And here's my other concern for this offense. Again, there's one thing I want to point out with Neighbors I didn't say. Neighbors played a majority of his snaps at LSU from the slot. Like he played a lot of them from the slot, and that's cool. And I think that's a lot. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying that I think he is going to play a lot of snaps from the slot in the NFL.
Like, again, just because a receiver isn't an X, I feel like that's kind of a common misconception. Just because a receiver isn't an X doesn't mean they're not a 1. Would you say that Cooper Kupp wasn't a 1 in 2022? Yeah.
And you can say the same thing about Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, exactly.
But my point being is, my point being that Neighbors, I think is gonna play a lot in the slot. Mm-hmm. I think this team has a lot of slot receivers.
Yeah.
I think this team is mainly built up of slot receivers.
No, I don't disagree.
In fact, I think this makes a guy who Giants fans are really excited about in Wan'Dale Robinson kind of obsolete.
Yeah.
That like he doesn't do anything. Everything that he does, Malik Neighbors does better. There's nothing else like that is his whole skill set just got robbed by Malik Neighbors.
No, you're not wrong, but I think Malik Neighbors has this schematic versatility as if you want to line him up as an X and you're playing against a team that doesn't run much press man.
Yeah.
Which a lot of teams don't run press man because there's not enough good press man corners in the NFL. You could keep Malik Neighbors at X, have him just extend the field, and then just get Wan'Dale open underneath because teams are so focused on Malik Neighbors. I think Wan'Dale Robinson could get open underneath because of Neighbors. I think Neighbors in some ways can open up lanes for Wan'Dale if they choose to use him in that way. They won't always, but I think it could be a little bit. I don't think the slot receiver just has to be one guy. I think they could kind of take turns, is my point.
I absolutely agree. It's just like a lot of these guys' best fits happen to be in the slot.
Yes.
And you're kind of like,
you're right. But I think
Isaiah McKenzie's a slot guy. Allen Robinson at this point in his career is a slot guy.
Yeah, Hodgins kind of is
Hodgins is kind of a slot guy. The only I'd argue Slayton's a slot guy, kind of.
Well, everyone is best in the slot.
Yes.
Because you just have more room to work with. You're gonna be the best in the slot.
Yeah, but I mean more so like with
they made their career as a slot receiver.
Yes, is more what I'm saying.
But not Darius Slayton. Darius Slayton, I wouldn't say so.
I think Slayton and Hyatt are two of the guys that are gonna be playing outside.
Yes.
I think what I think most of the time is you're gonna see Slayton, Hyatt, and Malik Neighbors on the field, with Slayton and Hyatt playing outside. At least in passing concepts.
I think we might see. I think, personally, just to get their best guys out there, we're going to see. And again, I understand what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing. Neighbors as the X, then Slayton as the Z, and then Wan'Dale as the slot. That's what I'm expecting.
I think we're going to see a lot of Hyatt this year. That's my kind of prediction.
Well, Hyatt's a nice playmaker, but I don't see him as much more than like.
I don't either. I think Dable. We were talking about, is this going to be one read, throw the ball, or do they want to trust that offensive line a little more and go vertically? I think that kind of depends on the players you're going to have on the field, because if they're going to want to go to vertically, Hyatt's going to be there.
I will say this. They're not going to have 3 receivers that they always have. Like, they're rotating the line. Because say what you want about this New York Giants team, they are so deep at wideout. They have a lot of talented guys. Now, not a lot of guys that play a bunch of different roles, but they have a lot of talented guys.
Yeah, I don't know if deep's the right word, because like
you wouldn't say it's deep?
I don't disagree. I think
they have like 5 wide receiver 3s.
When I think deep, I think like you have a wide receiver 1, you're 2, and then you've got a lot of good guys. I think they've got their wide receiver 1, and then a lot of wide receiver threes.
Sure.
Which is
Okay,
deep
that's
enough,
fine.
but I
That's
wouldn't
fine.
know if I'd call it deep. I think it's
I
it's
would
good depth.
consider that deep.
Good depth.
I would. All right, man. I don't even understand what you're saying. They're not deep, but they have good. I don't even understand what that means. But
I don't know. When I think
whatever.
deep, again,
The point is, they have a Malik Neighbors, and then they have like 15 slot receivers. That's what this team is.
one would argue that's just 16 slot receivers, but I digress.
I'm not gonna disagree. I'm not gonna disagree. But yeah, no, listen, I think this receiver core should be good for what they're trying to do, and I think they could change it depending on the type of concepts they're going to be running. I almost just dropped my phone, and my phone has all my notes.
Yeesh.
Yeah. But don't worry, I could catch a ball unlike Darius Slayton. Don't you worry.
Hey, there you go. God, Gunnar Olszewski is on this team. That's a slot receiver team.
Yeah, it is. Well, him, Miles Boykin, but I think those guys are there for,
special teams and all that. Yeah, I'm just looking, man. Mm-hmm. But let's move off the receivers. Let's go to the tight ends. Now, we do have to say, they lose Darren Waller, who not even 2.5 years ago, we were saying was up there with Travis Kelce, as best tight end in the game. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And now he's retired, making music videos about his divorce.
He spent 1 year with the New York Giants, and that happened.
That'll happen, and it sucks because going after the momentum that the Giants created last year, going and getting a player like Waller, which was such a good fit in this scheme, you're expecting big things. Fortunately, it didn't happen. But it's not it's not a great tight end room. It's not the worst.
It's not a bad one.
It's not a bad one.
Listen, I think people sleep on Bellinger.
Mm-hmm.
I do.
I remember when they traded for Waller, Daniel Bellinger's dad actually came out and was like, "Y'all are sleeping on my son."
No. Well, I thought that it was going to be both of them on the field. Both of them did have a role. Bellinger and Waller were really different.
Yes.
Really different. But now I mean, there's a Theo Johnson community. There definitely
I'm not a part of that.
I'm not a part of it either, but there are guys that really like him because of his athleticism. I don't think he's bad. I think as a tight end too, he's good. He's fine. I'll take him as a tight end.
It's funny because Theo Johnson tested really well.
Oh,
really
great
well.
Athlete.
I thought he looked athletic on tape. I didn't see that athleticism on tape personally. I watched Theo after the combine. I was like, oh boy, I have to go watch this athletic tight end. And I go and I'm like, yeah, he's an athlete, but I didn't see what he dropped at the combine on tape.
Yeah, that's fair. And that's the case with a lot of these guys, especially now, because they know how much the combine means. But
I think he's a good tight. I liked him as a prospect to a degree.
And listen, he's the tight end too. He'll be fine. I don't think he'll ever be this game breaker. Some people think he'll be. I know Brett Coleman's a huge fan of him, but I look at Theo Johnson. I like him as a 2. I like him as a 2.
And then you have, in return for, they basically traded Saquon Barkley and Xavier McKinney for Jack Stoll.
Well, Jack Stoll's going to be their up back. Don't you worry.
A soul for a soul.
Yeah. They don't have Myrick anymore, so Stoll is going to play that blocking tight end, that fullback, H-back role for them. He wasn't a fullback in the NFL because he was on Philly, and Philly didn't run with a fullback. They just didn't use one. But he was a tight end, and he did block well. He's a good blocker. They're going to have him out there for that role. Once again, not just a fullback, he'll also just be a line of scrimmage blocker. That's what he's there to do, and he'll be fine at it. But for the most part, this is Theo Johnson and Daniel Bellinger. This is their, tight end room. They don't have a jumbo slot. They don't. I think after how poorly it worked with Waller last year, they just don't care.
I would also say they don't care about bringing in jumbo slot because of all the slot receivers they do have.
That's fair. Yeah, but it's funny. They have so many slot receivers, but how many of them are actually a jumbo slot, take a hit from the linebacker? I mean, maybe Allen Robinson? Maybe?
I mean, he could, but he's also just not what I guess. Hodgins can.
Hodgins. Yeah, I agree. Hodgins. But besides him,
that's about it.
Yeah, really. So it's funny. They have so many slot receivers, but they're all the same type of slot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see my point from earlier on.
They have a
It's gonna
type.
be-
This
they
has been
have
my
a
favorite
type, man.
line. Every team has some type at some position. For
Hmm.
the Giants, it's slot receiver. It's just route running slot receivers that separate. Which again, there's worse types to have.
Of course, it could just be all contested catch threats, and
Yeah,
you're running.
precisely. Uh,
But
Instead, they
let's
just
move
have
now.
none. Let's talk about this
Now, now
offensive line, though.
so now we move to the Giants' best player on offense, left
Andrew
tackle
Thomas.
Andrew Thomas.
Yeah.
This guy is just fantastic. It's something I like to pound my chest about because in that draft, Andrew Thomas was my top ranked tackle.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very happy to see him go as early as he did.
Yeah.
A lot of people were
And then
surprised. It took him a
you
little
lost
while.
hope for a
I
year.
lost hope for a year. And then he comes back and he's one of the top left tackles in the NFL.
Yeah.
He's just fantastic, man.
Mm-hmm.
And he was injured for some parts of last year. You're
Yeah.
hoping that he can stay healthy, and if he can, you're not worried about that spot at all.
Correct.
And then you look at left guard, where they massively upgraded.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not massively is a big word, but they upgraded.
No, I think it's a big upgrade. Jermaine Illuminor is currently listed as their left guard.
It's either going to be him or Runyon. I'd guess Runyon because
so
Runyon played.
This is what I want to entertain right here. Do we think they might move Evan Neal? I know you posted a TikTok about this very recently. Do you think Evan Neal gets moved to left guard and then Jermaine Illuminor plays right tackle?
So I think we're going to have to see this team play some games first. I think they're going to keep trying the right tackle Evan Neal experiment, and then they're going to find out it stinks, and then they're going to try it. Personally,
hopefully those couple of games are in the preseason because they're not winning games with Evan Neal.
Let's touch on Evan Neal since we're talking about that. Evan Neal, first round pick 2 years ago now. I liked him enough coming out. I had some concerns, but you're hoping he can move past them. This guy is a turnstile at right tackle. He just has awful technique. He's so unbalanced. He gets beat with speed. He gets beat with power. He's on the ground 80% of the time, it feels like. As a run blocker, despite his size, he's not a people move. Well, he has his moments of people moving. He'll move people. But it's tough. It's tougher for him from the tackle spot because they'll run zone, they'll run outside zone, and he's just not agile enough to stay on his feet a lot.
And it's so crazy because I remember this guy got drafted, and I remember watching his film, and maybe it was just because of the college competition, or maybe he just genuinely got slower. But he looked like a good athlete.
Yes,
and
he tested well. Yeah, he tested well too.
And now it's just what the hell are we watching? This is not the same guy.
I do recommend giving that TikTok a watch because it's insane to watch him on the ground as much as he is.
Yeah.
But again, it's the experiment at tackle. It's over. Hang it up. It's like that backpack that's hanging on by a thread. Just let it go.
Meanwhile, the guy that we were just talking about, Jermaine Illuminor. I don't know how you feel about him, but I like Jermaine Illuminor as a right tackle.
He's not some elite right tackle. He's not.
I don't think he's elite.
But he's a solid left.
I would say
great.
Right tackle. I would say he's one of the. I would say he's one of the better right tackle. I would say he's a top 10 right tackle in the NFL. I would.
Okay.
I think that.
I don't know if I'm quite there, but
top
he's around
10 right tackle.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
I would put him in that conversation at least. I think he's a good one. He did a good job with the Raiders, mainly a run blocker. But he's not a bad pass protector at all. He's going to really move people in that run game. I don't know how great he is in a zone blocking scheme, but he should be just fine.
He's athletic enough.
Yeah, exactly. He's someone I am expecting to be I think he's one of the better signings of the offseason, truly.
Right. And if the Giants decide to do that, I feel a lot better about this offensive line. I can just promise you for the first 5 weeks of the season, Evan Neal's playing right tackle. I'd be very surprised if he's not.
That's 5 entire losses.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Guys, we're not exaggerating. That's how bad Evan Neal's been at tackle. He's been awful.
He's awful.
But we'll move off him. We talked about Jermaine Illuminor. And then we move to another, we're hoping to see more. John Michael Schmitz, second-round pick from last year. He was my top-ranked center. I thought he was, high floor, going to come in the league.
Exactly.
Be a good player.
Exactly. I will say this, in defense of him, you think about it, the great center rookie seasons as of late. Creed Humphrey.
Tyler Linderbaum.
You know? they have great guards next to them. Smits did not.
Yes.
He did not at all. I think now that they have a John Runyon right next to him, that they might have an Evan Neal who should be a lot better if he's a guard right next to him, or if they don't, then it's Jermaine Illuminor right next to him. I think that is really going to change things for the Giants and John Michael Smits. I think he's going to look a lot better because, I mean, let's be honest, how many successful rookie seasons do we see from centers without good guards? Yeah. Like, it doesn't happen. I think now Smits has a legit opportunity here.
Yeah, and I agree. I think he's going to be better because I liked him coming out of college. But we can't gloss over the fact that he was bad last year. He was really bad.
He was bad.
He was I have high hopes. I think he's going to be better just because as a prospect, I liked him. I don't think he's that bad. Yeah. I think having better players around him is going to help. But
also,
there's a world where he's not, and it's like, oh, okay.
This is their 4th new offensive line coach in 5 years. Just keep that in mind. So
yes, of course.
Maybe this is the one. 5th time's the charm. That's the saying in New York.
And then there's John Runyon, and I don't know if John Runyon's going to play. My assumption is if Neal's going to be playing right tackle, Runyon's going to play left guard, and Illuminor's going to play right guard, just because Runyon played left guard where he was, and Illuminor played on the right side with the Raiders.
Yeah.
But I like Runyon. Like he's not a liability, which is a major upgrade from what the Giants had last year, right? I don't think he's a great player.
Yeah.
I do think I think the signing was a little overhyped.
Oh yeah.
But
the thing is too with Runyon, he was kind of covered by the scheme.
Yes.
But then again, Dable might be covering him with the scheme. We don't really know the type of offense Dable is going to run, but if it's like the Giants' offenses of past, yeah, it's going to be a quick passing game. They're not really going to give the offensive line many opportunities to screw up. And I think Runyon's good. I don't think he is a major like guard. I think he's good. He's not going to be a liability at all. But again, we'll see with him. I haven't seen him in an offense that really asks much of him, and I don't know if that's going to change this year. We will see.
Yeah, right. So then you look at this offensive line, and if I'm looking at it as it is on our lads, where Evan Neal's right tackle, I'm still not confident just because that's how bad Evan Neal is at right tackle, right? Now, if Evan Neal's playing guard, I like this offensive line a good amount. Like, I think he could be a good guard. And I think you're looking at an above average to good offensive line.
Yeah.
But again, I think we're definitely seeing 5 weeks of the Evan Neal right tackle experiment, and it's going to go awfully.
Yeah.
No, I do have a hypothetical here. What happens if Evan Neal's good
at right tackle? Okay, now let's talk about what if Daniel Jones is a Hall of Famer? Like what? Like, let's be realistic here.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if Evan Neal is good at right tackle, then this offensive line is in a really good spot. The only question then becomes center. Like, what's going on there? I think we both agree John Michael Smits is a better player than we saw last year.
Yes.
So, yeah, there we go. Now, offensive superlatives. This might be the easiest group in terms of offensive player of the year and offensive rookie of the year. Offensive player of the year, you said it, their best player offensively, Andrew Thomas. Without a doubt. It's not even close, really. I want to see them get more creative in terms of how they use him. Get him out on space, and, if you really want to set receivers up for after the catch, do a bubble screen and just put him out there and have him block. Like, have him do some stuff like that.
Some more tunnel screens and such.
Exactly. Do some stuff like the Lions do with Penny Sewell, because you have one of those guys. You do. Offensive rookie of the year, how are we feeling? This one's obvious too.
I mean, Malik Neighbors, come on.
Neighbors, without a doubt. He is going to be their major playmaker here. Without Saquon, they need someone to carry the ball. They need someone to make plays, and that's what Neighbors is going to do. X Factor or 12th man, you have that on this side?
God, I mean, that feels like they have 12 12 mans on their receiving line. You know what I mean? But no, no, I don't. I was going to, but no, I don't have any.
Okay. I have an X Factor. For me, this is an obvious one. Daniel Jones as the X Factor.
Yeah.
If Daniel Jones can put together a good year, amen. They're in a good spot. I don't know if it's overly possible at this point, But if Daniel Jones can even go back to what he was doing in 2022, where he just wasn't hurting them, good spot. Good spot.
Good
That's
spot.
all. That's all. You know.
And now let's move to this defense. And you have Shane Bowen, new defensive coordinator, after Martindale and Dable have a fallout. What can you tell me about Shane Bowen and his defense?
Shane Bowen is coming from Tennessee. He was a DB coach there. He's going to run a similar type of defense, I imagine, right? It's going to be a 3-3-5, okay? We're going to see a lot of spot drop zone, I'm expecting.
Yep.
We're definitely
not only that.
We're definitely not going to see as much rotating safeties. Like, Martindale rotated the safeties a lot. I remember that Rams game. It was like every play they were rotating the safeties. I don't think that's going to be as common, but what were you going to say?
I was going to say, and I think there's going to be a lot of stunts, a lot of blitzes zone blitzes going on.
Yeah, the only question is, Bowen was a DB coach. So do we know if he's going to keep doing the stunts? I mean, maybe. Right. It's hard to tell, right?
Right.
And then zone blitzes, I mean, maybe it's possible because of the personnel. I think McFadden is a really good blitzer, but
that's kind of
we will see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm interested to see, like, will they stunt a lot? Will they get the linebackers involved in the pass rush? Again, something we used to see a lot with the Titans. If they do kind of carry over the same stuff they did with the front, they will still rush forward, but they'll blitz linebackers. And then they'll drop, like, a Thibodeau into coverage. Or they'll drop some of these other, maybe even a Dexter Lawrence into coverage. Like, they're
you
not
can do it.
You
can do it.
Exactly. You have those athletes. And that's the thing. So many players in the NFL now on the defensive line are athletes. They can do these things. They're these hybrid players. The Giants are no exception. They have a Brian Burns. They have a Dexter Lawrence. They have a Kayvon Thibodeau. Like, they have these guys. So, you know what? Take advantage a little bit, right? And I think they have a guy who at least was part of a coaching staff that would do it. Now let's see if he carries that over.
So we mentioned their names. Let's hop into this defensive line. And I want to start with the best player on this defensive line, that being Dexter Lawrence. This guy is just – is he D-tackle 1?
There's so many good ones, man.
There's so many
good ones.
If he's not 1, he's probably 2 for me. Like,
he's the best nose. He's
definitely
the best nose because
he's also so much more than a nose.
Exactly. I would probably say he is the best. What he does, I mean, there was a play in that Colts game 2 years ago, I want to say. It was Quentin Nelson trying to block him. And when I tell you he did the NFL equivalent of dunking on him, I'm not exaggerating. He literally pile drived him, and then it was almost like a glitchy Madden animation where he wrapped his arms around Quentin Nelson and the quarterback at the same time and brought both down.
Yeah.
Like, that's not normal.
That's not a normal thing.
And Dexter Lawrence is making these unreal plays like that, shedding off blocks or just eating up double teams constantly. And he's such a good pass rusher, too. He has so many moves in his bag. And he's the type of athlete that if you put him on some stunts, oh, man, some good stuff is going to happen. And now that they have Brian Burns on the edge, too, oh, my Lord, this defensive line
I'll let you talk about Brian
damage.
Burns because I really like Brian Burns. You like Brian Burns more than I do, so go. I want to hear what you have to say.
I like how you're just assuming that, but you're probably right. Listen,
no,
Brian
I know I do.
Brian Burns is someone who, in terms of technique, handwork, I mean, man, he will work a long arm, and he works the long arm really well. And then you swipe that off, and it's almost like when you're an offensive lineman. I played offensive line for my varsity football team. I was a 4-year starter, and I know that when you get a defensive lineman's hand off of you, you kind of feel like you have a moment to recover a little bit. But then, when you're playing against a Brian Burns, you disengage the hand after he puts it on you. And it's almost like instantaneously, he's working a move off of how you're kind of redistributing your weight or something like that. Because, I mean, you put your hand on my chest, right? I have to kind of move. See how I'm moving my right shoulder a little bit to disengage your hand?
Mm-hmm.
He'll take this little bit of leverage that I'm using my shoulder or losing in my shoulder, and completely violate you just based off of that. From the edge rusher position, he has great bend too. He is so technically sound and he's so quick with his hands. It makes him such a dangerous pass rusher. I'm a big Brian Burns guy. Put him with Dexter Lawrence and then add some stunts to that too, and it becomes insanity.
I think it's a really good fit. I think it's a really good fit. I think Brian Burns is a fine run defender, but I do have my concerns about Burns as a run defender, at least what I see on tape for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have Dexter Lawrence next to you, it helps a lot,
Yeah.
of course.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look opposite at Kayvon Thibodeau. I'm not huge on Kayvon Thibodeau.
You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be.
Yeah,
I think some fans get really misconstrued because they see that he had a lot of sacks last year.
And now tell me how many pressures he had.
Exactly. And a lot of those sacks too are kind of just
coverage sacks, or
not just coverage sacks, but a lot of them are they think he's gonna spot drop and then he just goes because he spot dropped a lot last year.
Yeah.
They did kind of use him the wrong way. They had him drop back into coverage a lot. But yeah, no, there were a lot of times where he kind of just got in unblocked. Maybe it was a bootleg or something, and it happened too much. It was like fake sacks almost.
Yeah.
Like he didn't earn a lot of those.
No,
Now,
not at all. Again, he had 10 sacks last year.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he had 43 pressures. That's a 25% pressure to sack rate essentially.
Yeah.
So like you can't. That's not something that's going to happen a lot. And the other thing is he like I recommend go and watch the game against Arizona. They consistently let Trey McBride just block him in pass protection, and he just couldn't get past him.
You'll see some plays from Thibodeau, and it's been a thing since college. He'll go 100%, and he looks great, but you'll see some other plays where it's just like literal non-factor. He's either making a play or he isn't contributing to the football game, right? And it's too inconsistent with him. I think he would almost excel as a complementary, rotational guy. And we're saying this is going to be a 3-3-5, right? I think it's pretty likely that we see Jordan Phillips as the last interior defensive lineman, and then they put like a Micah McFadden, maybe rotate in a Azezu Jalari with Thibodeau. Like I think they're gonna try and find ways to keep him just out there for the plays where he is going to excel.
Right, and Jordan Phillips, touch on him a bit, really underrated player.
Yeah.
When he went down with injury last year for Buffalo, it was a big deal because he's a good player, he's a good defensive tackle, and he'll be even better next to Dexter Lawrence. And Azeez Ojulari, I'd argue, when healthy, he's just as good, if not better, than Thibodeau. The problem is he's never healthy.
Yeah, he's very different from Thibodeau because I see a lot more consistency from Ojulari, and he plays with a lot more technical, ability. But yeah, no, for him the big question is health. I think as a rotational guy, he shouldn't be getting injured too much, but he's kind of been a rotational guy and still been getting hurt.
And still getting injured. So.
Yeah, I don't really know with him. It's an interesting story. But yeah, this defensive line, I mean, I like their starters. I don't think they have overwhelming depth. I don't.
No.
But yeah, no, I really like their starters. Like I said, the combination of Lawrence and Burns and then Thibodeau as a rotational guy should be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
It should be.
And then let's move to the linebackers. And Bobby Okereke was awesome last year, man. Just fantastic middle linebacker, one of the top ones in the game right now. I remember when they gave him that contract. I was a big fan of it. A lot of people weren't. And he has really lived up to that contract, and he's still going to continue to live up to it in my eyes. Great Mike linebacker. They love him. And then Micah McFadden. Really underrated season last year, I think, at least for the type of player that he is. Great blitzer, good will linebacker.
He is a nice, strong run defender. Like, that's what he's here to do. And he goes vertical. He steps towards the line of scrimmage. He fills his gap. He engages blockers, and he holds his ground. Like, that's what he does. Not a great pass coverage guy, but so few linebackers are great in pass coverage and also good run defenders. McFadden is more of that run defending type of build. Okereke is great. Okereke is a great football player. Underrated. I feel like he's one of the guys where Giants fans aren't just glazing him because he's a Giant. I think he is one of those guys that actually deserve the hype that only Giants fans seem to give him.
Yes.
Okereke has been a really good player for a long time, but with the Giants, he
Yeah.
really shined as this kind of star of the defense, right? Of
And
course, he had Dexter Lawrence, but he shined as someone that could kind of do it all, go sideline to sideline because no one else will, right? Very good player.
And depth-wise, there's Isaiah Simmons, who you can kind of touch on as a linebacker, kind of like a slot.
Yeah,
Kind of
I
like
don't. It's going to be weird because we're assuming they're going to run this 3-3-5, or maybe we're going to consider a 4-2. Depends on what you consider Brian Burns to be. Is he a linebacker? Is he a defensive end?
Right.
You know, it's a whole thing. But they're going to be running some form of nickel, whatever you want to consider it. And someone is going to have to play that nickel corner, that slot corner role.
Yep.
And I think they have two nice outside corners. I think they're in a spot they really want Isaiah Simmons.
Who's your other outside corner?
I like Deontay Banks and okay, I said really nice. Cordell Flott. I think there's a plan there.
Okay.
I think there's a reason you want to see him out there, is what I'll say. Do I think he's overly good? No, but do I think he has potential to kind of show us a little bit? Maybe. Right. I think there's at least like a reason to have him out there. I don't think he's just some liability that you're having out there just because you need to field 11 people.
Right.
Maybe you put Drew Phillips out there if...
I'm not a big Drew Phillips guy.
Well, you got speed.
He does.
Yeah.
I just didn't like his tape very much.
So. No, I don't disagree. But yeah, my point is I think they have two outside corners. I'll say that. They don't have a nickel. They don't have a nickel that I like. Drew Phillips might play that, but I don't really like him as a nickel.
I think Jalen Mills could play nickel, like if they needed him to.
That's okay. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And in this type of scheme, yeah, it should work. But I think Isaiah Simmons going to that nickel spot, I would like.
I think it'd be cool too. I'm intrigued to see how they use him.
Yeah.
But let's go to now the DBs, like we were touching on. Starting with their number one corner, Deontay Banks. Loved him coming out of college. Yeah. Had a really nice rookie season last year. Should only be getting better. I mean, there's not a whole lot to say other than this.
There is a reason. There is a reason to think he might regress. I'm not saying he will, but there is. New scheme, very different scheme. It's not going to be demanding of him to be physical and match receivers. No, this is a zone team now. This is what you're doing, and it's going to be a lot of spot drop zone. Your ability to match people and be physical is kind of irrelevant, all right? Unless we're switching up the coverage that we're running. I don't think this complements Banks' skill set well, and that bothers me because I was a big Deontay Banks guy. Do I think he'll adapt? I sure hope so, but I really can't guarantee. There is reason to think he'll regress.
Is there a world where you're kind of like, you are a number one corner, we liked what we saw last year, here, go to their best receiver and play man coverage?
I hope that's give him kind of the L'Jarius Sneed on the Chiefs treatment with the Spagnuolo.
Yes.
I hope that's what they do, but I don't know. That's not something Tennessee's done in the past.
Right.
So
have they ever had the top corner though too? You know what I mean?
That's okay. Fair point. I hope you're right because I think that's the best thing they could do. We want to have a conversation about Cordell Flott clearly because listen. I think he had a bad season last year. But I think there is reason you maybe want to entertain keeping him out there as a younger guy.
Sure, yeah. Like I'm there. It's just like it doesn't. I'm not.
I'm not excited for it either.
Yeah, but after the season I saw last year, it's hard to have excitement about that. Corner spot.
That's fair. But I think at least they have a plan there. The plan is either Cordell Flott, or if Cordell Flott looks bad, they put Drew Phillips out there.
Right.
Because I don't think Drew Phillips is playing nickel. I don't think he's a good enough tackler.
Nope.
At nickel, this is where it gets interesting. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Jalen Mills can play that spot for them, and I think he'll play that really well. Or do they go ahead and put Isaiah Simmons there? I think that should be a spot where they're good.
Yeah, I think they're fine nickel-wise. I think you're not worrying about it too much.
Mm-hmm. If they decide to take that plan. Our lads, which we agree, that's the depth chart that we use, they have Drew Phillips as the nickel.
And we disagree. Yeah, we're not there.
We're not there.
Drew Phillips is not the physical player that you need at nickel.
Exactly.
But now let's move to the safeties, and we'll start with their draft pick, second round, Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota.
Smart.
I liked him enough. A smart player.
Smart
I think
player.
I think he's a good fit in this zone system that
Yeah.
they're running.
And he kind of, I mean, not just kind of, he is their Xavier McKinney replacement.
Yes.
Okay, and this is a new type of defense that isn't going to need an Xavier McKinney type of guy, but he's going to play that role when they need him to, and he's going to be, he's just disciplined, and he knows how to call the shots. Like, he's going to be their signal caller in this new defense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he's going to be Shane Bowen's field general.
Right.
That's what I expect. Jason Pinnock, that's an interesting name because he's someone that, again, shows flashes of, like, insane athletic prowess for some reason. But he just hasn't put all of it together yet. You think he can finally do that here or no?
I mean, never say never, right? But I also don't have high hopes for it. I wouldn't be surprised if, if Milrow isn't, not Milrow, sorry. If Mills isn't playing that nickel spot, he's probably playing the free safety. Like,
That's fair.
I think that safety spot, it could see some rotation for sure.
So you think no matter what, they're going to put Jalen Mills on the field somewhere?
I do, because I think Jalen Mills is a good, like, maybe not good, but he's a player that you're okay having on this defense.
He's a starting 11 NFL player in this game.
Yes.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree at all. Yeah, I think Pinnock at least gets an opportunity, if not in the regular season, at least in the preseason. But yeah, let's move on to the defensive superlatives here. Who is your defensive player of the year?
My defensive player of the year is Dexter Lawrence. For me, I mean, that's kind of easy. He's just, again, I think he's the best. He might be the best defensive tackle in football. I'd be remiss to not pick him.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where I'm going. Right, Dexter Lawrence. Let's see if we continue to agree on everything here. Defensive rookie of the year. Where are we?
Tyler Nubin, of course. He's going to get the most snaps. It's easy.
Yep.
I do have my 12th man and my X factor on this team.
Okay, I have my 12th man. Who's?
I'll let you go first.
Azezu Ujulari.
That's not my 12th man for me, so you go ahead, tell your thing.
Well, the way I see it, Ujulari as a rotational piece for them,
yeah.
I think he's going to be a contributor, right? I don't think Thibodeau... I think Azezu Ujulari's biggest contribution will be getting Thibodeau off the field. Yeah. And I'm not saying that as a knock on Thibodeau, but I'm saying that as more of a compliment to Thibodeau when he's at the best of his ability. But you want to get the best of Thibodeau without getting the useless waste of body. Now I'm really giving Thibodeau shit. But now you want to get the best of Thibodeau without needing to deal with the effortless reps that he gives at times.
Of course. My 12th man is Isaiah Simmons. I'm excited to see how they use him, and maybe he comes in, subs in for McFadden at linebacker in clear passing situations. Mm-hmm. Maybe he comes in and plays the slot. Maybe he plays a little safety. I think he's a versatile player in the style of defense, and he will be moved around a bit. I don't think he's ever going to be a full-time starter, but I could totally see him being, again, a guy you rotate in on certain passing downs or certain blitzes, to have him do his thing.
Yeah, no, listen, I was definitely thinking about Isaiah Simmons with my 12th man. It's just, I don't know if he has a clear established role. And I don't know if Shane Bowen is creative enough to get him out there. So I think there's a chance he's just depth. I think there is. I don't know that 100%, but I don't know 100% that that's not the case.
Of course. And my X factor is Kayvon Thibodeau. Because, hey, if he can put it together, live up to that top 5 selection, be the athlete that he is at all times on all plays, maybe you get a really elite pass rushing duo in Thibodeau and Burns with Dexter Lawrence in the middle, and suddenly it goes from a really good defensive line to a borderline fantastic defensive line. You know what I mean? So
yeah. No, I don't. Listen, if Thibodeau can become a 3-down player, come on. It's going to be ridiculous. But I just don't think that's overly
I don't
realistic.
either. But that's kind of my thing with my X Factor picks this year. It's like, maybe it's not likely, but if this player can put it together, that's a big deal.
I get it. Let's talk about special teams now. Right? This is a team, I mean, they clearly went out of their guy to get some special teams aces, I would refer to them as. Gunnar Olszewski, we mentioned him earlier. He could be a return man. He could be a gunner. He can go out there and do some things, really
He's a
contribute.
special. He's a
He's
special
a special team
through
surgeon.
and through.
He's a special team sergeant. Special teams ace, whatever you want to call him. And then Miles Boykin's another guy that they actively went out and got him because of his special teams prowess. I think they're one of these teams that saw the new special kick return rules, and they said, we want one of those guys.
Yeah.
Okay? Because we know how big of a deal it's going to be. Let me just say right now, though, they have plenty of guys they could go ahead and throw out there.
So many guys. I mean, even as returners, you could throw Malik Neighbors out there if you wanted to. I doubt it because he's their star player.
Hyatt, Wandale, Isaiah McKenzie.
Hyatt, McKenzie, Gunner, Drew Phillips is fast.
Yeah.
You could get him back there. Like Tyrone Tracy, they drafted. Like, there's a lot, man.
Yeah. And then you want to talk about the other spots, right, outside of just Gunner. They have a punter that I'm not big on. I don't think he's done a very good job. But, you know, they're still rocking with him. But, yeah, no, I want to look at some of the kind of lead blockers. I want to look at the guys that could be on kickoff team. McFadden, I think, can really be a contributor. I know that he's going to be a starter. But, again, this seems to be a team that wants to take it seriously. That does. And because of that, I think they're going to be willing to put a Micah McFadden on the kickoff team. Because if they understand the ability of a guy like Miles Boykin or Gunnar Olszewski to take one to the house, and they go out of their way to kind of sign those guys because of that, well, then they understand, of course, you want to be able to stop it. In order to stop it, you got to have a Micah McFadden out on the field.
Absolutely.
I think maybe even Nubin gets involved.
Nubin could get involved. Jack Stoll's going to get involved.
Oh, yeah. Stoll is definitely.
Bryce Ford Wheaton is an athletic receiver. He's a big dude. He'll get involved.
Maybe if Theo Johnson isn't getting a lot of volume at the start, we could see Theo Johnson getting out there. Yep. I also think if Eric Gray isn't getting much, he could go out there and get involved in that way. You mentioned it yourself, the new running back that they drafted. Name's escaping me.
Tyrone Tracy,
thank you. Bringing him in, he could be a returner. If not a returner, he could definitely contribute in other areas. Like, there's a lot of guys that they have. Of course, Isaiah Simmons. I mean, that's without a doubt.
That's without a doubt, yeah.
Yeah. There's plenty of guys. Jalen Mills, if he's not getting much value. Like, there's a lot of guys they have here that could go out, contribute on special teams. I feel good about how the Giants special teams unit will look.
Me as well.
Let's move over to the prediction for the season, right?
Yeah.
I have them with the ceiling of 9-8 and floor of 5-2. We both agreed on that. Or 5-12, sorry. We agreed on that. We talked about it earlier on before this recording. We're both in agreement. They could kind of fluctuate around that range. What's your prediction for them?
7-10.
Yeah, 7-10, same exact thing here. Let's go through their schedule, take a little bit of a deep dive. Starting the season off, it could be much worse. They play against the Vikings week 1, but it's in New York, so that could definitely be a win. Apparently, Sam Darnold is supposed to start the season.
That doesn't surprise me. I predicted that as a JJ McCarthy truther. I predicted that. You got to give him time, but it's really like. But this is I think this is kind of a weird matchup for this Giants team because like this Vikings offensive line is good. Like this Vikings offensive line is really good.
Yeah.
Can they hold up against these Vikings receivers with this new offense and Aaron Jones? And then on defense, you're going to have Brian Flores against Brian Dable. And it's like, who's going to win there? So I think this is a tough game. It's not unwinnable, but I do think this is a tough game for this Giants team.
Flores is going to you know what? I'm willing to say like it's a really bad matchup for the Giants.
It's an awful matchup.
Yeah. Flores is going to show Daniel Jones some looks that he's just not comfortable with.
Yeah.
He's not. He still, despite being kind of a veteran at this point, he doesn't know what he's looking at. Especially when even if Dable is designing some great plays, Flores makes some crazy stuff happen.
Absurd
crazy stuff happens.
Yeah.
He knows how to confuse people just like Daniel Jones all the time. He's made a career out of it. I don't expect that to change here. Vikings, I think, win this with ease. Really, you make a great argument.
Yeah.
Uh,
So then the Giants Commanders. This is a winnable game.
Yeah,
This is
definitely,
absolutely a winnable game. Jaden Daniels might die. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. Jaden Daniels might die.
Absolutely. Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence coming at him. Come on, that offensive line is awful. They should win this one by a mile. Then I think Daniel Jones might die against Myles Garrett in Cleveland.
Yep, absolutely. Now that really depends on where this Giants offensive line is. You know what I mean? I feel much like even like Thomas against Garrett. I feel comfortable. Not comfortable. You never feel comfortable with Garrett going against
anyone.
But like
here's the thing too. Even if the offensive line is good, Daniel Jones is so like unaware in the pocket.
Yeah.
I think bad things can definitely happen. Also, that secondary is really damn good. I don't know who's going to separate besides Malik Neighbors. I don't. So, yeah, I got to go Cleveland there. But then
I'm cool with that too. Cowboys, Giants.
I think the Giants, listen, they matched up well against the Cowboys last time the two of them played on Christmas. So, you know, I'm willing to go ahead and say that the Giants can win this one. I do.
I'm not going to argue against it too much. I don't know if I'd pick it, but let's give it to them.
Okay, at Seattle.
It's all really. I think it really comes down to how good is this Mike Macdonald defense year one.
That's fair, but Dexter Lawrence versus that interior defensive line, I think Dexter Lawrence eats Geno Smith up for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Right, but it's also like who's covering those receivers? Like if they might get open quick, man. Lockett and Jigba from the slot.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. It should be an interesting one. This one I wouldn't. I think the Giants in some ways can match up well against them. It's kind of my point. But yeah, no, I'm not going to disagree. I think they're going to shut down the running game pretty well, which is important. That one I can kind of go either way. Like that's one of the more open ones to me.
Right.
Versus Cincinnati in New York. That one, again, the offensive line for Cincinnati isn't very good, but Joe Burrow doesn't really care about pressure.
Joe Burrow doesn't care, and there's just not enough. Again, it can't. That I'm not. I think that secondary's fine. I don't love it, and I think these Bengals receivers are gonna take advantage of the guys.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree at all. And again, the one big advantage that the Giants have is on the line of scrimmage when the Bengals are on offense. But that doesn't matter because when you're talking about like those elite of elite quarterbacks like the Joe Burrows, the Mahomeses, they just don't care.
Pressure's not a thing.
They just ignore it. Unless you're getting sacks, it doesn't matter.
Right. And it's hard to sack Joe Burrow.
Yeah, exactly. Then Philadelphia, again, Giants are home. Division rivalry game, I think it means a lot for both of these teams because Philly stole Saquon. I think they're really going to pride themselves on stopping Saquon here.
Again, just Saquon and McKinney for Jack Stoll. That's kind of the trade that went.
But I thought that you were going to say again who's guarding the receivers, and and I don't have a strong argument for you against that.
And I think and to me, Mailata is one of those guys that can't shut down a Brian Burns. Like Mailata is one of those guys that Brian Burns has struggled against.
You're not wrong. Like Mailata is one of the best tackles in all of football. Like there's no doubt in that. Then at Pittsburgh on prime time, I feel like this is the type of game that Pittsburgh kind of gets caught sleeping.
Yeah.
Because Pittsburgh does that a lot. Like, they lose a lot of games that they shouldn't. And then they win a lot of games that they shouldn't.
I do worry about, is Evan Neal still the right tackle this football team? And is TJ Watt going to have 4 sacks in the first 3 games, right? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I get that. If not TJ Watt, then Alex Highsmith. Like,
Mm-hmm.
But again, I just feel like this is one of the games where Pittsburgh just gets caught sleeping at the wheel.
It's fine.
So, I'm going to go ahead and say that the Giants win that one. Versus Washington.
Jaden Daniels dies part 2.
Yeah, exactly. Then Bryce Young, this is one of the games where the Giants aren't going to get exposed because they can actually match up against the opposing receivers.
Yeah.
And I think that's like that's kind of their win condition almost.
Mm-hmm.
So, the Giants, I think, win this one. I think they get back-to-back wins.
Again,
3 straight wins.
Yeah, we
going into
don't
the
know.
bye.
We don't know how good this Panthers team is going to be. Again, we had a
Yeah,
very high range of outcomes on him, but I'm okay giving him that win.
yeah, or even if we're not giving it the win, I just want to talk about what's possible. I'm not
Yeah,
I'm not
of
keeping
course.
track of this type of stuff. Uh, bye week, then after that, Tampa Bay. This is another one. I could see it coming off a bye. Some stuff definitely comes into play here. I think it's possible, right?
Hmm.
Offensive line for the Buccaneers isn't great. This is
I
one I
think it's
could go
better
either
than it
way.
was last year with the addition of Grant Bar. Again, we'll keep that for the Bucks
Yeah.
episode, but still, yeah.
Yeah, it's still not a great unit. Uh, then at Dallas, again, we talked about, I think the Giants match up well against Dallas.
But at home, I think this is split. I can give this win to
Okay, that's
Dallas.
fair. Uh, then they play against New Orleans in New York.
Give that to New York. I don't
Yeah,
love the
that's
Saints. You
well,
know what I
again,
mean?
that's one where I can kind of go either way because these two.
Actually, no. Yeah, no. Wait. No. This is where them having 16 slot receivers is going to cause issues. It's going to be this bump and run press man coverage against these
Mhm.
corners. I think this is called an issue. I think this is a game where Malik Neighbors can find issue,
Yeah,
personally.
oh, I think that's fair. And then Baltimore. I mean, how healthy will Lamar be at this point in the season? What's going to go on? We don't really know.
I'm still
I
inclined to give it to Baltimore.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's Baltimore, and Baltimore's a much better team. But I think this is when stuff just happens, right? When you get
Hmm.
around that week 15 area, that's where teams get caught sleeping, and this feels like a team gets caught sleeping type of game.
Right.
But again, I'm willing to go either way. Once again, listen. I don't think the Giants are going to have all of these. I'm willing to go either way type of games as a win, but I do think there's a fair share where you can make an argument. And that's the thing about NFL. There's very few set in stone type of games.
Right.
Game against Atlanta in Atlanta.
It's a tough
This
one.
one, I think that the Falcons, they're so complete. I don't know how the Giants can really go over there and win, especially in Atlanta. But yeah, I mean, yeah, there's not really much to say there.
I think the Colts next match up ridiculously well against the Giants.
Oh
I
yeah,
think
that offensive line is going to hold up. It
yeah,
definitely will. And then
straight up.
Philly, will they be starting their starters still? I don't know.
We'll see.
That's a big thing there. It's in Philadelphia. I think if they
It might
are,
be one of the
it
things.
might just it might
Let's say
just
out
be
of
one
nowhere
last
the
flash
Giants
from
are
Dable.
playing for a playoff potential wild card spot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if the Eagles are in the playoffs already, it might just be like, we don't like you, man.
Yeah, well, that's what
Like,
Sirianni does. That's how he
yes,
is. Uh, yeah, no, it's not a great schedule, not a great one, but I could see
no,
them winning 9. I really can. 9
you
is where we
can.
have that ceiling. We agreed on 7. Uh, yeah, but that's all for this episode. I hope you all enjoyed. If you want more of my content, check out the description. There's my content link down there, and there's Dino Talk Sports, that YouTube channel over there. That's where some of the other videos are posted. I've been doing the odds. He's been doing the evens. Definitely check those out. If one of your teams is pretty bad, I probably already posted a video on it, or he did. Definitely check that out if you're a Panthers fan, Saints fan, whatever. I hope you enjoyed, and next video is going to be up on Dino's channel, so just go ahead, check that out. And if you want more of my content, listen to the podcast or check out my Twitter. Of course, check out Dino. He has a Twitter. He does great work there. And yeah, I appreciate you listening, and I'll see you next time.